we've got our first guest here this morning, a veteran educationist and a public affairs analyst. I mean, backstage, we're almost having it back to back, talking about the U.S. election. You know, like what I said a while ago, that it's something that everybody is interested in. I'm talking about Peter Okungbowa, Mr. Peter Okungbowa, the proprietor of many education opportunities and all that, and the proprietor of Cavalry Crown Academy, and also one of the facilitators of Test House Tutorials, Gorilla Brains. Mr. Okungbowa, you're welcome to the program this morning on ITV.
Good morning.
I know you are still tempted for us to go back to that US election thing, but we won't go there now. All right, so let's say kudos to our children, you know, worlds that are below 18 years old, and of course they seek to gain admission into tertiary institution. Now, before this time, some few months ago, it became an issue whereby the Federal Ministry of Education had to give the order that not until you are 18 years old, you cannot gain admission into any tertiary institution. Even if you make all A's at your secondary school examination, or you make a JAMB and all that, but you must be 18 years. So that was the order there. But the new Minister of Education now, you know, Alausa, that's one of the first names now, you know, has announced. He announced yesterday that the federal government has rescinded from that position. So as it stands now, whether you are 18 years old or you are below 18 years old, you can gain admission into tertiary institution. And of course, it is already generating reactions and counter reactions and all that, because I actually met one or two parents that said that, look, it has to stand at that 18 years old, because that's when adulthood actually starts. As a matter of fact, the parents was trying to look at issues that have to do with how some children are being taken advantage of because they are not matured in terms of age and all that. So we are going to be looking at it from all perspectives as we hit the discussion this morning on the program this morning on ITV. All right, so Mr. Okungbowa, now you are a professional in this regard. Professional, there's no doubt about that. Education, admission, and all that. So what is your immediate reaction for, you know, releasing the benchmark now of 18 years admission, you know, opportunity?
Well, for me, it's a good thing, and it goes to show that the federal government has realized that governance is for the people, on behalf of the people and by the people. This policy was massively decried by persons in the academia. I remember that Professor Okonofo of University of Benin, one of Nigeria's foremost educationists, did decry the exercise and gave his reasons. And reading through his reasons, they made sense, saying that these policies ought to have been a town hall. Stakeholders ought to have been called in the education sector to deliberate on it before trying to swing it in. And when they eventually swung it in and it got rejection from stakeholders, they needed to backpedal, as it were. For me, a step in the right direction, but I'm worried that this country, persons who run the affairs of this country can wake up and make any policy, can make any law, can decree anything without consultation and without thinking. In the first instance, such a policy that you must be 18 and above is very anti-ingenious development, and it's very retrogressive in itself. That age maturity is no longer a thing you can restrict to age factor of 18. We were told when we were younger that life begins at 40. And we're also told that a fool at 40 is a fool forever. And in the light of contemporary developments and contemporary happenings, we now know that life does not begin at 40. It's just as an idiom and a metaphor. But it got to some people and made them lazy after all. They said life begins at 40. So between now and 40, let me see what can happen with my life. See, it's no longer, slow and steady wins the race. It's now speed and accuracy winning the race. Why should you want to slow down and be steady to win the race when you can go fast and steady? That's the idea of a jet plane, speed and accuracy. It goes to show that we were not thinking in the right direction before. I'm happy that they've had cause to rescind and reverse this policy, because it's a limitation, particularly for children who are born geniuses. What is more, for the child who wants to be challenged by the records of those before them, it's also a limitation on that child. Before now, sir, as an educationist and a classroom teacher, I know how these pronouncements even affected the psychology of people. There are a lot of people who stayed back home and refuse to attend lectures because they believe that their age will not be admitted in the coming section, because according to where the federal government stood, you have to be 18 and above. And I also wanted to ask policymakers, this Europe and America people are copying by fire by force. Don't you copy the good things about them? Over there in Canada, you can gain admission to the university at the age of 15. Even in the US, you can enter the university 14, 15. It all shows that you have something, you can back it up. The problem we have here, where I think the policymakers, what they should have done is to make sure that these claims, these result claims and these various results obtained by the youths today are genuine. Vis-a-vis that if it was gotten through malpractice, then it does not go to show that the country is growing academically. It goes to show that the process has been mortgaged and boycotted. So if you fight that, and yet young people are thriving, it's a good thing for the nation that children are doing better than their parents. That's the idea of projection. I think that my father will be very happy that I will raise children who got into the university at the age of 14, 15, when I got into the university at the age of 22, 23. It's progress. If you're putting in the work sector, I think those who made this policy should also have been thinking that in the work sector, there are certain jobs in the private sector where age is a factor. Yeah. They like to take you in young. Yeah. For example, in the banking sector, they like to absorb you young. So you give time, particularly the ladies, so you can give time to them before you go for antenatal and maternity leave and all whatnot. Now, if you say that Nigeria should raise graduates who are 19, 20 and are good at what they went to school for, not that they are just certified by reason of malpractice, even in the higher institution, but they are good for what they've been certified for. If we are intentional about raising young people who will be PhD holders at 22, 23, 24, if we will be intentional about having professors who have so-called distinguished themselves in character and in learning and deserving of the appellate, PhD, and professorship by promotion, then we should start looking at the fact that the younger generation will be best taught by young people like them. Our times are gradually winding up. We are exactly not of the computer age like the Gen Z generation. For a man who wants to be a policymaker, he has to be close to the Gen Z generation. This is the idea of how Christ even came to earth, took a human form, the likeness of man, in the form of Christ, and died for the sins of man. Taking the likeness of man will give him the first-hand experience of what man goes through. Because at the level where he was as a celestial being, impeccable and infallible, there was no way he could know why man stumbles and why man makes his mistakes. So he needed to come in that likeness and that form to understand the bit of the weakness of a man, so that man himself will see him as a character that is unto him, that understands him flesh and blood, not spirits, as it were. So if we want to raise children that will be smart, we need a new generation of leaders who are also young and smart. And for us to have a new generation of leaders who are also young and smart, we must let them and allow them grow early through the school system and get into the workforce very early and very young. That way, they can make meaningful input into their education policy. I often tell people, Nigeria does not have a philosophy on scoring her education sector. In the case of Nigeria, in the local balances, anywhere below face, they will tell you in this country, just go to school, any work you will get. Actually, a country that is intentional about her academic policy should know the trajectories of what they are training children for. Nigeria is deficient now of healthcare workers. How are we deliberate about bringing people into the nursing, the healthcare program, and the medical program, and the pharmaceutical programs? How are we deliberate about it when school fees paid in our public institutions are not affordable by the regular people? Are we not saying that only the sons and daughters of those who have somehow lived above the rest of us, that are the majority, deserves to have such jobs and deserves to have such professions, as it were? Yes, all of this goes to show that governments themselves are not intentional about policy, or they don't even know the directions that policies should assume. As we're lacking now in the medical field, I think that the few older ones who are not jackba are earnestly praying and waiting for the younger ones who will come and take over from them, who will do it better, who will be better trained. They must not become professionals and chartereds. They must not become people who have decorated PhD when they're already having gray hair. It is a misnomer of our teaching system here and our lecturing system here. An average teacher in Nigeria does not see your failure as his failure. He sees your success as his, your failure is yours. The white man sees your success as his and your failure as his. That way, when he's teaching, empathy is part of the game. I think it's hard time we begin to celebrate the idea that our young people are doing very well academically, but I vote for checkmating in the sense that is this academic growth corresponding with other facets of their lives in terms of maturity? All of this now boils down to home values and the values of the community and the society, the church and the worship institutions, the values that they've all together inculcated in such children to have us grandstanding, grandiose, well-developed, intellectually sagacious young children. I'll be very happy to see my first son will be a pilot at the age of 20 or 21. I'll be very happy about that.
Let us be careful because some analysts have also said that smartness, like you tried to talk about a while ago, smartness is not necessarily a product of age. You know, it is a product of who you are. You are smart, you are smart. And of course, you are not smart, you are not smart. So how do we look at all that vis-a-vis this new development?
The most educated family in the world, coincidentally, are Beninese, Imafidon. They're in the US, born and raised in the US, but their father is a Nigerian immigrant to the US. When Mr. Imafidon was asked, how are his children different
What's
from
the
other
basis
people's
of
children?
saying that?
They're the smartest in the world.
What's the basis?
It's all over there in the social media, on the internet. For one, his children became PhD holders at the age of 11.
Okay.
His son resolved the unknown question. You know, his daughter resolved the mathematical problem that had existed for centuries at the age of 13. And he was asked, his first daughter became a PhD holder at the age of 14. So, and he was asked, how are your children? Why are they different? And do you know what he told them? They weren't always like this. It was his intention to raise them to become like this. So he devoted resources and time to their education, giving them the perspective of ranks that can be broken, achievements that could be attained. And interestingly, they were born and raised in societies that has all it takes to help them grow in that direction. I dare say those children were born here with the kind of leadership we have here. Those ingenuity in them will never have been discovered. So I think for a parent like that has shown that smartness is not as you put it. We know there are those who are naturally gifted above others. The IQ levels of human beings vary. But when it comes to the psychological development of the human being, you have what they call the IQ, which has taken preeminence. But there's also what they call the EQ, the emotional quotient. Being intelligent emotionally has its own advantage. There's what they call the SQ, the social quotient. The social quotient also has its own skill. Some persons might be IQ smart and EQ and SQ not smart. But they can be book smart and they cannot be smart about other spheres of life. There are people who are wonderful administrators, but when it comes to exams and the IQ thing, they are nowhere to be found. But they have their natural acumen developed in that direction, as it were. I do not believe that there is any child that cannot conquer. I do not believe that there's any child that cannot break grounds. However, environment remains our problem. Why is it that most of our parents who are fortunate to jack back from here now raise children who are competing very well abroad? Because having been born and raised in this system that will stress you and get the best out of you, or majority are unable to stand it, but if you can stand it here, you are naturally a genius abroad. Because the system there is a bit flexible and allows you, the system there aids you, the system there supports you, the system there encourages you. Here, you are your own researcher, you are your own lecturer, you are your own teacher, you are your own everything. So when you have come through this kind of a painstaking process and you find yourself abroad, you see that you are actually very smart. If the Nigerian government wants to realize that the age factor is never the issue, let them, like Donald Trump, congratulations, we like this dance. Now, like as it's going to block the borders, as he's always spoken about, let the Nigerian government officials realize that the border to be blocked here to get the best of our people out educationally is malpractice. When you block examination malpractice from nursery to primary to secondary and to the university and to the tertiary institutions above the first degree, if you penalize and criminalize this examination malpractice, criminalizing it, then you will see that those of us who cannot naturally display our IQ can decide to display our EQ or display our SQ in other sphere, as it were. Those who are doing very well in terms of the internet space as far as content creation is and as far as monetization of these online platforms are, intellectually they will be breaking grounds in studies because the human Q system is funny. An area, if you max an area, you tend to be best at that area, you tend to be deficient in other areas. There are people who have a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of that. You get me? So let us not just encourage that book work ahead of every other thing that is now working for our young people. Let it be an agglomeration of everything.
All right, now, what do you think is wrong with Nigeria? Because in all of all these things that we'll talk about, we must be able to situate it right, in the country, in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria seems to be a country that is lacking. I mean, when you take a country like China, you can really see young workforce in China
it's baffling,
as a result of early education and all that. Then, of course, you see technological advancement and all that. That's in China. You know, in the US it's also happening, in the UK it's happening. Then you also talked about Canada is fast happening in these countries. But in Nigeria, despite the fact that because all these policies are geared towards trying to have a rejig of the kind of workforce, you know, system that we have, a situation whereby let's do away with that old workforce, let's begin to have young workforce and all that. But Nigeria seems not to be moving in this direction as other nations of the world are moving. What do you think are the issues?
The problem of the Nigerian education system is not just the Nigerian education system, it's tetra-headed. Whatever you do at the education level, if it's not supported at the economic level, it's to no advantage, it's to nothing. You get? Like I said, if we had purposeful administrations, the ones that are intentional, one thing is to educate children, another thing is to provide them right mentorship. A number of us were born in the 80s. Against all odds, as it were, we were determined to go to the university. We were determined to be educated because the guys who were mentors to us then were the professionals, the bankers, the engineers, the lawyers, the doctors, the pharmacists, the nurses. We saw them as those we should look up to because they weren't driving the impressionable vehicles in town. They were the ones who dressed nice. They were the ones who were mentors to those of us who were in secondary school.
Yeah.
I want to be a banker because that's my neighbor. He drives a nice car, dresses
And of course,
nice.
he lives well because he's
And
a
he
banker,
lives where he's just his
went to
neighbor.
school.
And he went to school.
But today the narratives.
Internet fraud took over. The mentors our young people have are Pablos and Eskimos and all whatnots. The kind of focus this Gen Z generation now has is a very funny one. Are you going to blame them? No. The country did not provide right mentorship for them. So they took to whatever it is that's working for them. I think what the country can now do is to meet this Gen Z where they have their strength, which is the internet. Teach them programs and policies. Teach them the good and the usefulness of the internet space, how they can be financially independent of the internet space. If you want to keep emphasizing that they must be doctors and engineers and lawyers to be human, to be people, or to be recognized in society, you are getting it all wrong because they are seeing that those who are useful in society today are no longer those professionals. They are not those who now do things that are unnamed and unlabeled.
Negative things.
Yes.
All right, so it's a good one because I had to do my fact finding when Peter Okumbowa talked about the Imafidon family. I quickly had to do that, really. The story of the Imafidon family, Professor Chris Imafidon and his wife and parents, and Anne, wife Anne now, parents of a British Nigerian family known for their exceptional academic achievements with their children setting numerous records in the United Kingdom. I think that's a good one to the Benin Kingdom, is a good one to Beninese, anywhere they are. To know that the Imafidon Kingdom from Benin is making great strides all the way in Britain and of course in the UK. Now, Peter Okumbowa, let's stretch this further now. One is trying to look at maturity as it stands, though we've been able to say that maturity is not a product of age and all that. But let's look at it. If you look at the social vices in schools, tertiary institutions today, you talk about courtesan, you talk about alcoholism, you talk about prostitution, drugs, and all that. Now, you will find that these young stars, I mean, if you were to do a data analysis, you'll probably find out that these young stars are most culpable. I mean, I was born at 20 before I eventually gained admission. And of course,
no thanks to John.
When I got there, I had to read my books because I know that I had my younger ones and all that, junior to me in class and all that. So what will you have to say about all this building up and all that young stars, underage, getting into social vices in tertiary institutions and all that?
Mr. Evans, they would have gotten into social vices if they were in the streets, if they were at home and not in the university. All of this goes to show that upbringing and parenting is part of a child's education. I think that for a child who is 14, 15, 16 in the university, if that child has been raised well at home, that child still listens to the parents. That child still calls, every day hears from the parents. Such a child, the fear in his or her heart of the parents will keep that child going. After all, the scripture says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he grows, he will not depart from it. That thing you're not talking about is not an excuse for the age factor. It's a lapse in society. And it has nothing to do with whether they're in the university or not. After all, in Benin City, where we are here, there are little boys, 15, 16, 17, who are in the street, who have become members of one or two cults or the other. Those ones don't have to get in before they join the confraternity. When they enter the university, they will legitimize and feel enabled and empowered because they are now academic thugs, as it were. But all of this goes to show one thing. The scripture says that should we continue in sin, that grace may abound. And the same Bible said, God forbid. Should this thing continue and us talk about it and adumbrate about it in the studios and wherever we meet ourselves? If it's going to continue, it's simply that the government has not realized that it is now their responsibility to sanitize our higher institutions of learning.
So
it is now their responsibility to sanitize our community. Sir, the last time I checked, government and police agencies and law enforcement agencies know the heads of these confraternal groups. It's not really a secret thing. So if you are not dealing with it, you are not dealing with it because you know you are using them or you need them for other purposes.
Yeah, but again, let us be careful with that because some of these groups are registered. They are registered, there's no doubt about that. And they are really not secrets, they are really not cults, as it were. You know,
I have no problem with brotherhood or any of such affiliations. I know what you are trying to tell me. What I have a problem with is that we may turn a blind eye and excuse them of. If my organization stands for what is right, and there is another organization that is robbing my reputation and doing what it could to malign my reputation, I'll take all necessary actions in support of the law enforcement agent to bring such other groups to justice. I am not talking about those groups who are registered with government, who are doing philanthropic gestures here and there. I'm talking about those who, for flimsy reasons, will pick up a gun and shoot the next man. I'm talking about those who have become deviants, as it were. I'm talking about those who don't know how to play by rules of engagement, as it were.
Instead of talking about the groups, why don't talk about the people in these groups? Because some of these groups are registered. So let's begin to talk about the people in these groups that do these things.
I think, strictly speaking, sir, in a manner of speaking, there is none of these bodies that are registered with government that are into these things. That is why I said the defiant members or members that are quasi-related to them, not strictly members of them. You get me? So if I were a member of an organization that is recognized by law and some other groups or some other persons are rubbing off on my integrity, I will join the law enforcement agent and put them where they belong. This is my worry again. When I was in the university, I wrote a thesis. It was an assignment given by Dr. Philip Ujomu. And the question was on the role of science and technology in the sustenance of our nascent democracy. And of course, I'm not going to tell you what role of science, what role science and technology is playing in American election today. I'm also not going to tell you what role science would play in our development. Sadly, the government just talk about it in templates of papers and refuse to execute them. Why is it that 21st century Edo, 21st century Nigeria, a law has not been made to the effect that every public building, every public space rendering public service should have a CCTV camera or wired to a central administrative unit in that locality? You go to a place like the UK, you don't have to worry about traffic because the police is not in the roads. I've been there, so I'm telling you what I know. The police don't necessarily have to be on the roads. Just violate their traffic law. Before you get home, there will be a fine, a penalty waiting for you. How did they know? There's camera everywhere. What will it take this government of Edo? I'm talking to the incoming government now. What will it take you to promote a policy for the good of Edo people to make sure that our streets are rid of these hard lives or these killers and these people, these criminals? Just CCTV solar panels, CCTV camera that comes with a solar panel is as cheap as 120 to 130,000 naira. So instead of trying to make the people dry by collecting land use charge and tenement rates from them, why don't tell them that they'll be part of the security network of the state by providing cameras in every home? Yeah,
but don't you think there are more pressing issues? You are talking about CCTV cameras. The roads are not even there.
This time around, good. The roads are not there, but we will have something to reference to. If you know that every home has a camera and you are a thief, I'm sure you'll be careful. If you know that there are cameras everywhere and you are a cultist, you are going to go and kill, I'm sure you'll be careful. Because from where you committed that crime, you'll be traced all adjoining roads. And before you know what's going on, you'll be found. There is nobody who wouldn't comport himself when they know there are cameras everywhere. When we were speaking in the event of the campaigns that passed, we were capturing the nuance of this younger generation because they are very quick to rubbish. They are quick to learning the good things, and they are quick to perfecting the rubbish.
Very daring.
Now, how you tame them is you, as the older generation, use the science and technology that has given them, that has made them thrive, to cage them. If you have, for example, in the UK, you cannot even open a coffee shop that people from the public will come in and sit down and have coffee without a camera. The government will not approve it for you. You cannot even open a bookshop, because when crimes are to be investigated, it's all now holistic to the extent that you in the private sector, your cameras may be petitioned to be brought to the state or to be brought to the police for investigation. Because that's the best way to do forensics these days. But here, since we cannot invest in fingerprint machines and all of that, since we're not that tech in society, the least we can do is buy the one the white man has manufactured for us, which is CCTV camera, coming with solar panel and everything. At that level, sir, you will not be worried that your children in the university will be involved in hooliganism. You will not be worried.
All right, so if we say that less than 18 years old now can gain admission into tertiary,
it's a good thing.
Tertiary institutions in Nigeria, what do you think that is going to mean? Would that now bridge the gap of the technological advancement that we are craving for in the country, and maybe other advancement too?
It won't change anything, sir, because it was just days ago they pronounced, and the pronunciation has not taken effect. So we're still living the life we're living.
Yeah, but I mean, we've had less than 18 years old gaining admissions.
That's
what
I'm saying. That's why I said it will not change anything. It was just a question of a policy statement. Even if they are succeeded with imposing the 18, what good will it have done for us? It would have increased social vices. Because these young persons, you're telling them to go back to school or stay at home or be doing other things, or are you going to open enterprise college in all the local governments of Edo State and all the local governments in Nigeria to occupy those people before they turn 18? What's the point? So I really don't see how this changes anything. The only thing it does is that at the level of individual development and advancement, allow them breaks. Don't suffocate them. You have a responsibility for that.
All right, so I think also before this time we also saw the policy. I think it was also by the same Federal Minister of Education that was trying to support that even if you gain admission less than 18 years old into a tertiary institution, you can only do that for a first degree. You do a first degree, then if you are going for professional, professional courses, law, medicine, and all that, you must have a first degree. So I think that was a policy that was also tried to be introduced by the Federal Minister of Education. But the problem that we've always had is that these policies are introduced and we never hear them and all that. So as a professional in this issue that we're talking about now, so what is your advice now? Because we're having a situation whereby a lot of children at home, they are saying that because the federal government has said that, okay, it must be 18. A lot of persons are beginning to kind of say that they won't go back to school and all that. What's your advice?
Well, I'm sure that the moment the federal government reversed the policy, it has become that popular. I'm sure that those listening to ITV now will hear us debate this issue and they will tell the next person. And so long as it's a school system, such information are not difficult to disseminate. You just enter the parent platform and drop it there, and the whole world becomes aware in 1 minute or 2 minutes.
And that will become big business for you guys too.
Well, what you call business is relative, because what we are experiencing in the school system is not, the problem we're having is not even these issues. The problem we're having is even more than these age issues. The problem is that young people are no longer inspired or motivated to want to go to school. There's no pursuit of excellence, and there's no award of excellence. The government lacks an understanding of how to run the education sector. They needed people who knew what the education sector was.
Well, what are you guys doing?
At Gorilla Brain, sir, you are here, so you can bear witness to this. I've given out cars to students 3 times. This time around, I'm giving out landed properties. So that before they grow up, those land will appreciate in their millions of values. Why am I doing this? I know that incentives and encouragement has to be part of our learning system. What should have been incentive and encouragement for us today? It's no longer there. It was job opportunities, good job opportunities. In the 70s, people were in the universities knew that when they graduated, they had placements. In the early 80s, those who went through school also knew they had placements. Today, it's safe to say that a first-class graduate from the University of Benin does not have an automatic job anymore. It used to be that in Uniben, when you make a first class, they now see that you can instruct the generation next to come to absorb you as their best brain. It's no longer a policy in Uniben. So if an average tower like the University of Benin receives such, what do you expect? So parents should know that the onus of raising children to become academic giants is not on the state or government, it's on them. And they should do whatever they can to make these students thrive. Interestingly, sir, These young people and their head peaks at very young age.
Yeah.
This stab in your hand, what your child will do with it, Mr. Evans, you will not do it before you die.
Certainly, you're right.
Now, why can't we get the best of them in that direction by making ICT now a compulsory part of secondary school, primary school curriculum? You know, the Nigerian policymakers will say they are too young. Meanwhile, these children will carry these stabs of their parents, hide and do things inside and hide those files inside. The fathers and the mothers will carry them
but that's already creeping in now. I mean, the exams are written on ICT
This is
platforms.
why I am now saying, let the government now intentionally pursue the Gen Z generation in the direction where they have their strengths. If you bring this learning, when we were contesting governorship, part of the promises we made to other people was that we were going to bring foreign exchange market in the forex and make it part of the curriculum from secondary school. The reason is simply that we're now in an age where money supersedes every other thing. So if money must become what you learn the right approach to making money. If we don't teach them, the street will teach them the approach to making money. And what the street is going to teach them will be at variance with the values that society should have.
That's already the reality on ground.
That's where we are already. So the age is not necessarily the issue. It's that all wrong heads in our society are product of government failures. Because if the government were, before, it said in Benin that as a parent, before you absorb yourself of any blame as to a child's misdemeanors or misbehavior, you first of all ask yourself, have you done the needful as a father before you now absorb yourself? If I've done all that I could or I should, this child just decide to go his or her way. The Nigerian state has never had a father in respect to developing the children consciously and making them what they should be. You are here, Mr. Evans, you work here every day.
Yeah.
The reason you are here is to make sure your children are better than you.
Yeah.
And that will be your greatest joy. Do we have such philosophy underscoring our government system? That the government is intentional about raising people who will be better than them. The government is intentional about raising excellent people. No, they are not. And you know the funny thing? With science and technology, it's a lot easier to govern today than 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
Okay. All right, so I want to say a very big thank you to you, Mr. Peter Okungbawa. Always a wonderful time whenever you come on our television set to discuss issues, particularly as it relates to education. So one more time, we'll say congratulations to our wards, our children that are below 18 years old, that they can fire on now. They can take the JAMB, exam. They can, take the JAMB exam. They can enroll for the JAMB examination. And of course, they can also enroll for the Y examination. Then the NECO examination is also there. So you know, these youngsters are so lucky. In our time, we didn't have NECO. NECO is just a product of some few years backward now. In our time,
just government brought in NECO.
Yeah, in our time, it was WIC. You have to sit for your WIC or the private GC. And we
How lucky are they, Mr. Evans?
No, they are lucky.
This generation is not lucky in any way.
They are lucky. They are lucky in the sense that they are lucky.
Your generation is still book-wise smarter than them. They are just a misguided generation, and government is their problem.
Let us be careful.
The best
with that
of
now.
this generation would have been gotten with an intentional government. As I speak to you, I will still best any child born in the 90s and in the early millennium when it comes to subjects that he or she is learning in school. Because the curriculum that failed me is what they are still using for them. So what do you expect? What you have today are children who are just thriving. The best of them is not there. You can't get the best of these children. It will take an intentional policy to get the best of these children.
Anyway, we take a refutal on that. They are not a misguided generation. They are not. They are good generation. It's just the fact that a lot of things have to be done. The government has to do the needful. And of course, our parents also there, they have to do the needful so that we can get it right with this generation. So one more time, the federal government has reversed the 18-year 18-year admission benchmark in tertiary institutions. We saw that the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, had to make the pronouncement yesterday. So we say congratulations to our children one more time. So please, 18 years and above now, you can sit for your JAMB, you can sit for your WIC, and of course, you can sit for your NECO examination. So that by next year, maybe you are 16, 17, or even 15, you can get admission into tertiary institutions. So Peter Okungbawa, one more time, thank you so much for finding time to come on our program this morning.